Good day, I'm Dr. T, and welcome to my desktop slash messy living room. So today I'm playing a game called Banished, and I want to talk about some of the chemistry of Banished. Now, if you're a player of Banished, you'll notice that I've got a couple buildings in here that are not in the vanilla version. I've definitely got some mods. And I want to talk some about those mods too. But long story short, the vanilla game, if for those of you who haven't played, which I strongly encourage you, fun game. The vanilla game's a little bit on the brutal side, whereas the mods, they put it more into the chillax category. So, I'm just kind of wanting to chillax a bit. Okay, so I got my town. I finally got sheep. So, I've been playing this couple of hours last night, this morning, and I have been waiting for sheep so much. So I finally got my sheep. But okay, so basically what I want to do in this series is pick a topic in the game and then just kind of talk about it and talk about the chemistry of it. Okay, once again, for those of you who haven't played, the little yellow circles are telling me things such as question marks, as I don't have anyone actually working at my herbalist, not herbalist, um, and that, my tavern is out of resources and I've got all the clothes I need. Basically it's there, and I've turned off that field because I got enough food. Okay, so in this game you're looking at a kind of a medieval town. You start out with, I think it's like 10 players, and then you need to grow your town, get them houses. You have a barn and a stockpile resource, and that's it. Okay, so yeah, let's start off with this tavern actually. So in the game you have trading posts, and this tavern's linked to these guys. So every now and then a boat will come by, and a boat comes down the river. And as the boat comes down the river, it'll stop and you can trade. So you gotta trade stuff. So one of the options you have is your tavern will convert fruit into ale. Now, okay, I'm a teetotaler, so I don't drink alcohol like at all. Too many family members, bad things. So, no. But, that said, I know enough about it to go, I think ale is not made from cherries. I think that would be brandy. Or at least wine of some sort. But that said, it's a game. Liberties have to be taken. You have to make this game fun. You can't just make it super realistic. That would be even more brutal than normal. Okay. My screen capture software is messing with where my mouse goes. That's annoying. So down here I've got some orchards. I've got cherries. It's the only fruit I currently have the seeds for, I think. So I'm growing cherries. And so this is a classic one. These trees are doing photosynthesis. During the summer, so obviously in the middle of winter they have no leaves. During the summer they're doing photosynthesis. They're converting their light, CO2 from the air, turning that into carbohydrates. And then, as part of the reproduction strategy, they're trying to get things to eat it and travel on, and number two out the back end, plant the seeds. And, it's loading those seeds up with nice sugars. Of course, as humans, we bred them to be delicious and sugary. So you've got these trees that are doing photosynthesis, carbon dioxide, water, sunlight as an energy source. You get carbohydrates. For these guys, you're predominantly doing sucrose for plants. So your cherries are going to have a lot of sucrose, a lot of fructose. These are all simple sugars, nice and sweet, very, very tasty. Of course, other things in there. Plants make all kinds of weird stuff. And that gives you all the little flavor molecules. So the sugar just gives you the sweetness, but the flavor of the cherry or whatever fruit you've got is coming from all the kind of weird little molecules. And of course, that's something you'd want to preserve. So now we're going to take it to my tavern. Now this is one of those interesting quirks of the game. My citizens don't drink alcohol. The alcohol that's produced is purely for export. If I was making the game, I would have had the tavern where they go, they get a little bit to drink. So there's a small alcohol consumption, and that would improve happiness or something. Interestingly enough, the physiology of how alcohol gives you a buzz is not as well understood as you would think. And kind of why this is a good thing, it is definitely not quite so understood, because obviously there are some major downsides. So for modern society, alcohol consumption is not good. Bad things happen. There's a reason 19th Amendment occurred. But so what's taking place here? Back to the chemistry. What's taking place is you've got might be 18th Amendment. The two are actually intimately linked. Women's rights and prohibition were absolutely closely linked because at that time, alcoholism, and still to this day, typically involves spousal abuse, and it's typically the woman who gets abused. So those two were intimately linked at the same time. Back to chemistry! So in this case, what we're doing is we're taking the cherries, we're taking them to the tavern, and they're going to do a couple of steps. They're going to smush the cherries, they're going to liberate the juices, and then they're going to dump some yeast in it. And what's not in this game are bakers, but bakers would be working intimately with brewers. And so now you've got the cherries, and either the yeast on the outside of them, which wouldn't be naturally occurring, or they would be adding in yeast, very much the same yeast that the brewers would use. Although, honestly, I think they'd be using wheat to make ale, or some other grain. But anyways, you brew those up, and then the yeast are going to be doing and they're doing their thing, and their thing is fermentation. So you don't give them enough oxygen. So the yeast don't have enough oxygen, so they can't do aerobic respiration. The electron transport chain has to have oxygen at the end of it. They don't have oxygen. So instead, what they're going to do is they're going to do glycolysis, and then they're going to stop, and they're going to recycle their electron receptors by forming ethanol. Now, yeast don't just form ethanol. They form all kinds of weird alcohols and other molecules when they do this, and that's why these beverages are going to have different flavors than just alcohol and the original flavors. So at that point, okay, so you've got your cherries, which you could either crush them, juice them, and then throw away the pulp and then add the yeast, or you can do the yeast in with the pulp. And for apples, I know, apple brandy is going to be, I think it's apple brandy, is where you take apple juice, so you've thrown away the pulp. But there's a lot of flavor compounds that don't go well into the water. They don't leave the pulp well. But they would leave if there was some alcohol present. So Apple Jack, which is oddly enough not just a cereal, but a hard liquor. It's like, who named a cereal and a children's TV character after hard liquor? I don't know. But Apple Jack is you throw in the peel too. And so everything's just fermented together. And this liberates a lot more of these flavor molecules. So it's going to have much more of an apple flavor. And so presumably there's a cherry Jack. I have no idea. Once again, a teetotaler. So you've got all these little molecules that are going to add a lot of the flavor. So a lot of the flavor, once again, from food comes from really little tiny molecules that recept really in the nose, not the mouth. The mouth only has, 6, 7 tastes, more than 5. And so it's going to recept in the mouth. And so now you've got kind of this cherry wine, which you could consume, and it would be intoxicating if you wanted. And the real advantage here is it preserves your cherries. So these cherry trees are going to dump their... There we go. These cherry trees are going to produce their cherries all at once, and where the game doesn't really deal with food preservation, if you don't preserve those cherries, they're just going to rot. You buy some cherries at the store, and they don't last long, So now, what we're going to do is we're going to ferment it. That alcohol is going to keep anything else from growing in it. So you're going to spend some of your energy. Some of these are going to use some of the energy from the sugar, but not much. Alcoholic beverages have a ton of calories in them. And now you've preserved your calories for the long haul. And so now it'll hold for years. And if they wanted to, and I'm guessing in this case the ale would be kind of a cherry wine. But if you want to, you could then take that and you could heat up the alcoholic beverage. And you heat it to the point where it starts to boil and you start extracting off your compounds. And these come off typically by lower intermolecular forces / molecular weight. So the first ones that are going to come off are going to be things like methanol, stuff you don't want to drink. This is called the heads, and these are thrown away, at least by any replicable stiller. I think it's called a stiller? Yeah, person who stills alcohol. Then you've got the ethanol coming off, and this is going to come off with a lot of the flavor molecules. And at this point, the temperature is going to go up slightly. You're going to get your ethanol out. This is the heads. Sorry, this is the hearts. The head was the first part. This is the heart. And this is the stuff that people would consume. Once again, the dangers of alcohol are pretty hardcore. That's why I don't touch the stuff. But especially if you're in this society where you're trying to preserve your food, keep your calories. Ethanol has loaded with calories, and starvation is going to be a major issue. Now, of course, also the other social issues, spousal abuse, etc., are going to be an issue, and they were during the Middle Ages. And then after the ethanol mostly comes off, then you get what's called the tails. Temperatures are going to go up, and these are larger alcohols, stuff that once again you don't really want to be drinking. They're more toxic than ethanol. Ethanol is toxic; it's just your body can handle a modest amount of it, and so poisoning from it, unless you drink a ton, which people do, usually isn't the main worry. It's more of the impaired cognition is your main worry. But once again, if you consume too much alcohol, it's toxic enough; it will kill you. But the heads and the tails are far more toxic, and those should be discarded by your distiller if they're a replicable, high quality distiller. But anyways, yeah, so in this game, the alcohol then gets shipped over to the trading post where I can trade it for random stuff like my wonderful sheep up here. Oh, I love my sheep. One of the thing in this game, one of the motifs is that you've got usually like 2 tiers of resources. So the reason I want these sheep is because I can make a warm coat. Warm coats require leather, which I get for my cows and for my hunters, and I need wool. And the only way I can get wool is from sheep, and, well, I just got my wonderful sheep. Okay, so that's enough about me and my sheep. Just kind of a touch on alcohol. Definitely, historically absolutely critical invention. By the Middle Ages, they would definitely have been starting to distill this, although most of it would probably be consumed undistilled. Now, one of the interesting motifs they have in the game is, the idea of the taverns where the alcohol is made. Well, the tavern would have made their alcohol, but like every single house would have made their own alcohol, at least at some level. They would have made their own beer, or at least a lot of them would have, and sold the surplus. Because that's a great way to preserve food. That alcohol will kill all the weird stuff. It's going to be safer to drink than the water, although they would have still drank water. You still need water. So, yeah, if you're slightly interested in the game, I know I haven't really done anything other than a tour of my tiny little town. Great game, Banished. Absolutely love it. Totally encourage you to get it. If you want to learn more about alcohol with respect to history, recommend a book, The History of the World in 6 glasses. It's really 7 because the last one's bottled water. But The History of the World in 6 glasses, really a fascinating read. Strongly encourage you to read that. But otherwise, with that said, hey, I'm going to get back to my sheep, and I will see you in later videos. So while editing the video, I was reminded of something else to do with respect to those cherries. So of course, fermentation was an absolutely critical form of food preservation, with that alcohol killing off anything that was trying to eat and spoil your food. Well, another approach to keeping food throughout the year was to not have it all ripen at the exact same time. With modern industrial agriculture, you do want all your food to ripen and become ready at once, so you can just kind of go through a machine, pick it. But for most of human history, that wasn't desirable. So what I have here is a reproduction from a page of a 1732 seed catalog. And of course, this is beautiful still life with all kinds of fruit and nuts and whatever on it. And the theme for this page is these are all ones that you could purchase from the seed catalog. And they were all ones that, for this particular page, ripened in April. The seed catalog would have multiple pages, one for most months, if not all of the months. And therefore, you wouldn't have to worry about food preservation quite as much because you would have your food slowly coming in season. And so during one part of the season, you'd eat one food and then, it would go out and another one could come in. And thus you don't have to worry about preservation nearly as much. Keep in mind, there is no refrigeration, there is no canning at this point, at least not what we would consider modern canning. So preservation, it's a bit of a pain. With that said, have a wonderful day.